Good morning, everybody. I think we'll get started. I hope everybody's feeling energetic from yesterday's programming and networking, not to mention the Seaberry Revitalizing Shampoo and Conditioner that we left for you in your room. What I'd like to do this morning, along with ARM's co-founders, Michael Werner and Morrie Ruffin, is to give you a little bit of an overview of ARM's activities, and in particular, some visibility into two initiatives we've got as priorities for 2018. So just to reiterate some remarks I made yesterday, ARM's job is really to think about what are the barriers and opportunities for the sector as a whole that can best be addressed through sort of joint action, right? Work on behalf of the whole industry. And those priorities for us have tended to fall, and this year have fallen into these categories. One is to advocate for a clear and predictable regulatory pathway. And you'll hear a little bit later from Dr. Wilson Bryan from the FDA talking about the RMAT designation, which ARM promoted in the 21st Century Cures Bill and has been helping to implement this year. To enable market access and value-based favorable reimbursement policies. Obviously, we have heard a lot at this meeting about the reimbursement challenges of this sector, and that is one of the priority topics we'll talk about in a little bit more detail here in the next few minutes. We also seek to address industrialization and manufacturing hurdles, so that's been it includes standards work and establishing a standards coordinating body that we talked also about yesterday. And then we do a lot of stakeholder outreach and communications. We have a communications department that focuses on assembling, and there she is, Lindsay Skull, that collects industry data, disseminates it, obviously connects and talks to reporters about key dynamics of the space and the like. And then, and obviously meetings like this are part of that, creating a kind of home for members of the community to see each other and talk to one another. And then we work to sustain access to capital. We understand that there are a number of small and medium-sized enterprises in this space in the U.S. and in Europe for whom access to capital is an essential issue. So those are sort of 5 key goals and objectives. What we'd like to do today is focus on the two in bold. One, to tell you a little bit more about the thinking we're doing on reimbursement and reimbursement advocacy strategy for 2018, and then also to talk to you about the establishment of the ARM Foundation, which is intended to create a platform for us to do some more expansive and wide-ranging public education around issues in our space, which we feel will be really essential next year and going forward, particularly as more and more products enter the market. So with that, let me turn it over to Michael Werner, who's going to talk about the reimbursement effort.
Thanks, Janet. As you've heard multiple times throughout this meeting, securing a favorable reimbursement environment for regenerative medicine, cell and gene therapies, advanced therapies is kind of priority one these days for ARM and for all of you. And we have been working really for a couple of years to try to lay the groundwork for the advocacy work that I'm going to talk about here in a second. We have a very, very robust reimbursement committee, so I'll just put in a plug. For those of you who want to roll up your sleeves and work with us and really help us figure out the potential solutions, the priorities, the tactics, all of those things, that's where it happens within ARM. And please come up to me anytime. We can talk about what we're doing. Ted Slocum from Audentes and Don Hahn from Pfizer are our 2 co-chairs. And so that's really where all of this work is taking place at ARM. But really what we've done over the last year or two is start to gather all the ideas about what makes regenerative medicine products different, what's the value they bring from a clinical perspective and from a pharmacoeconomic perspective. How do the existing payment systems, whether we're talking about Medicare, Medicaid, or commercial payers, how do they or do they not accommodate these kinds of new therapies, many of which are going to be transformative, many of which may have just a single administration to provide a durable therapeutic benefit, right? And so how do those payment systems currently accommodate those or not? And then what are some new ideas for new kinds of health economic systems and payment models? So, whoops, I'm going to go to the next slide. So we have a white paper series. We've done a whole lot of work with CMS and with private payers, which I can talk about offline. But what I really want to focus on today is what we're planning to do for the balance of 2017 and into 2018. And it really comes down to these three broad buckets. So the first is we need to build the value story for these products. I talked about why are they different? Why are they, let's say, better? What kind of clinical benefit do they provide? Pharmacoeconomic benefit, durable treatment, transformative treatments. And we need to do that by using case studies, by doing economic impact analyses, and all sorts of other things. And we're going to use that value framework and that value story in the next two buckets, right? Because we're going to use that as the basis for our advocacy to encourage and to promote favorable reimbursement treatment now in the current payment system. So if you've got a product that's coming to market in the next year or two, or perhaps even beyond that, we heard at the reimbursement workshop this morning from some of the payers who were saying that they think that over the next few years, regenerative medicine therapies are going to be reimbursed, they refer to it as like on a onesie-twosie basis, right? Because the products are going to come, but it's not going to be a whole flood of products immediately. And that being the case, we're going to have to make sure that the existing reimbursement system accommodates those products. So there are very specific programs in Medicare for inpatient products and outpatient products and in Medicaid, and that's what we're going to be working on. We've already done a lot of work in that space. We're going to be fleshing out our ideas and our recommendations and develop strategies for action, working with the payers directly, working with CMS directly, working with stakeholder groups, physician groups, patient groups, payer groups, and the like. And then finally, we're going to start working on breaking down the barriers, what we're calling sort of the longer view, right? New payment and financing models for these kinds of technologies. And that's going to be all about, how do we get value-based payment reform for regenerative medicine and advanced therapies? And how do we deal with the economic analyses, the quality benefits that we can measure? How do we address issues like portability in the system? We've heard over and over that one of the key challenges is that if you've got a single administration therapy, a payer may have to make a payment up front, and then most Americans switch health plans every 18 months. So we have a lot of issues to address. You can see we have a very robust agenda, a lot of things to do, and we hope you'll join us. Over the next 3 months, we're going to be developing our strategy and our specific recommendations on these issues through the Reimbursement Committee, including what the resources we're going to need and our plan of action. We're going to present that to the board as part of the strategic plan for January, and then we're going to really hit the ground running and tackle all of these very, very difficult issues. If you have any questions, please come up and see me anytime today or tonight. We'd love to have your support. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Morrie Ruffin, to talk about the foundation.
Thank you, Michael. Let's get this. So before we jump into the morning session here, we just want to spend a little bit of time talking about this initiative that we're calling the ARM Foundation. Janet mentioned this in her opening remarks, and we're very excited to talk to you a little bit about this. This is something we have been discussing for some time here at ARM, and this year, actually, when we got together with the board at the beginning of the year, we felt that this was really the time to launch this organization for a variety of reasons, because I think, as many of us recognize, listening to all the company presentations and panel discussions yesterday and today, we're really at a moment in the evolution of this sector where there's a lot at stake, there's a lot happening. We are leading the effort through ARM on the advocacy side of things. This is what we've sought to build up over the years, but we always recognized from the beginning that in order to be really successful, we were going to have to think about education, and not just think about it, really address it. And this is not something that can be done just by sending information out to people and continuing to send messages to different stakeholder groups. This is a very disciplined effort that involves a lot of different groups and a lot of different stakeholders. So just give me a couple minutes. I'm going to walk you through kind of where we are in the evolution of this effort. So the mission for the ARM Foundation, as you can see on the slide, is to educate and inform, and to really be the resource to do this. And this is going to, as we said, require the effort of a number of different people. This is what we're going to be building now as we set up this foundation and launch it hopefully by the end of this year. And so as we do this, we have to think about what the activities are. So obviously, being able to inform the public in a way that they can receive information, digest it, use it, process it, understand it, is really important. And that's tactical and strategic, and all of this is going to be going into our planning. And this will be the foundation for the education that we do. As we do it, though, we also need to tap into resources around the country. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of different groups that are involved in this, whether it be at MIT or University of Pennsylvania. Many of the institutions who you all are familiar with are doing some thinking on this, but there really isn't a centralized effort. And part of the role of the foundation will be to amass this work, really tap into this intellectual rigor, and then help translate this to the various stakeholder groups, and then ultimately to involve the patients. So the structure of this, as you see here, on the left-hand side of the screen is ARM. This is how we are set up with our board of directors and the various initiatives that Janet mentioned at the beginning this morning that we are focused on. The role of the foundation is really going to be to mirror this on the education side, and to, through the various projects, I'll mention them in a minute, provide the intellectual resources to inform the work that we're doing on the advocacy side. And this will involve information sharing back and forth between both organizations. We want the foundation itself to be nimble so that we can take on new projects, and we're open to suggestions from all of you here in this room. But we're going to mention three that we're going to start with. So the first project, a very important one, this came to us from the gene therapy companies in the organization, is what we're calling the Gene Medicine Education Program. And this is going to be a national education program launched by the foundation. Is Susan Sikora in the room? Actually, so if you turn around in the back, Susan's waving her hand. We have retained Susan. Susan is helping us launch the foundation. She has run numerous public education campaigns in the healthcare space. She's really an expert in this. And if you are interested in this project, please seek out Susan over the course of the day today, or she will find you. But we want to hear from as many people who are interested in this project. The second project that I'm going to mention is the Economic Impact Project. And we've talked about value. Michael was just talking about in the context of the work we're doing on reimbursement. And we are asked all the time to describe the value that these therapies are bringing to the healthcare system. And that's something that we have to be able to talk about, and talk about in a very credible way. And it's not just platitudes or saying, oh yes, we think this is going to benefit everybody. We really need to build a base of knowledge so that we can talk about this in a way that people understand it and that we can convey it very credibly. And the other part of this is going to be, as we all think about the work that we're doing in individual disease areas and the pharmacoeconomic work that supports that, that's another key component of this. And being able to bring this all together in one central effort that will then help the work that we're doing on market access is is going to be one of the really important projects of the ARM Foundation. And then the last one I'll just mention is what we're calling our industrialization project. Many of the sessions you've seen around here today are talking about issues of industrialization and manufacturing and standards. And communicating this to people, educating folks about what this really means for the healthcare system is a very important effort, and we're going to dedicate resources to that as well. So I'm going to skip over that this slide because I just mentioned some of these projects. For the education project, as we just think about this, I mean, this is really about the journey of understanding and recognizing that a lot of the people who hear about gene medicine or gene editing technologies or CRISPR really have very little knowledge of what this is and understanding of it. So getting from where they are now to where we want them to be excited, to be curious, and to be engaged with us is what this education project is really all about. And so again, we've done a lot of work around this and framing this up. So if you would like to talk to us about it, please seek me out or Susan, as I mentioned earlier. And then just before we jump into the morning session, I just want to show you some of the board members for the foundation. So these are people who are going to be part of the initial board of the ARM Foundation. We're going to be adding 3 or 4 more before we officially launch. But it's a great group, a very diverse group of industry leaders, leaders in the patient community, academics, really representing the diversity of stakeholders in the space and people really interested in and dedicated and committed to education. And then lastly, our timeline. So we set an ambitious timeline for ourselves at the beginning of the year, and I'm happy to say that I think we're actually ahead of schedule. We are raising money currently. Ultimately, just for the gene medicine project, we believe we're going to need about $2.5 million by 2019. So this, this work is going to need resources. So hopefully some of the people we showed you on the slides and others can be encouraged to help us with this effort. But I think the official launch we're looking for really either by the end of this year or very early next year. So stay tuned on this, and I think hopefully by this meeting next year we'll be able to report out on the progress of the ARM Foundation. So with that, I'm going to shift gears and introduce the moderator for this morning's panel. So if Debbie Zhuang could come to the stage. Debbie, you could then welcome your panelists up here, and the podium is yours.